Oh my goodness, Karen, we are back. We are back for this interview on an early Monday morning, and we are fresh with perspective as well as gratitude. And I really think that that starts the bones of a conversation or an interview off perfectly. So I am so grateful for you taking the time on this Monday morning to have a conversation with us inside of the Be Extraordinary Women's Network.
Well, Debbie, I am just so grateful for you. I'm grateful for your support. I'm grateful for your abundant mentality where you want to share your gifts with the world and with me. I'm so grateful for your gifts. And I am so grateful for having you in my life. And so thank you for inviting me to be on this show. And thank you for what you're doing to empower women. Because, Debbie, I don't know about you, but I have been in so many different organizations or groups and different things where women don't empower women, and it's
Mhm.
painful. It's really painful because I don't expect that. I expect that we're going to get together and we're going to cheer for each other, we're going to support each other. I feel like we're family. And I'm like, what happened? And then I remember even families have issues, and it's one of those things that you just have to stroll with. But when I find somebody like you who is so abundant and so generous, and you're a woman empowering women, oh, it just feels so good.
Well, thank you, Karen, for seeing me, but I like attracts like, and what you said about me is I could repeat back. So let's let the audience understand a little bit of who you are, Karen, because you've actually, like I think I put in the description here, there's been a big start and there has been a huge momentum in this last little bit. But tell us, who is Karen Hall and what does she actually do?
So, Debbie, I'm known as the Queen of Empathy, and that came about from several different focus groups that I had where my clients all got together, and I had a moderator, so I wasn't like doing it myself, but the moderator asked them questions, and every single client identified empathy as my superpower, which I thought was really interesting. And then one of them said, really, she's the queen of empathy because she has such deep compassion, and the way that she coaches and different things. And the moderator said, look at all those little hearts. The moderator said, you should use that moniker. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can say queen, like, and he said, yes, you need to use that. And I'm like, okay. So I stuck it out there. But what was really interesting about these focus groups was it was like attending my own funeral. Because as people were saying all the things and reflecting back to me what they saw, and so many people said similar things. And one woman got up and started dancing, and she said, Karen is my biggest cheerleader. And I was just like, oh, that was just so was so rewarding, to know that I had been able to give these gifts to other women and to men, but it anyway. So this is something that has been a lifelong journey for me. When I was little, I was I still am terrified, but I dealt with a lot of anxiety, and overcoming my fears has been my lifelong journey. And also learning to regulate my emotions has been something that I have had to work on. I still have to work on it on a daily basis. And that ability to really get in touch with how I'm feeling and to have empathy for myself has been tricky. It's like a piece of cake for me to have empathy for you when you're hurting. When it comes to me, I forget, and I often have to have someone remind me, Karen, would you talk to me like that? And I'm like, never. And so I have had to learn these things. And I think because I've had to work on it so hard with myself, it has, it's given me an ability to help other people, to work on it with themselves, because I think I'm not the only one, that forget.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. If anybody is watching and can relate to that, that empathy, that compassion, we often, as heart-centered entrepreneurs, as givers, as healers, whatever it is you identify with, we often can just care and send love to everyone else. But when it turn it around and you're like, what about me?
Yeah.
It's a huge awareness and a huge awakening to a moment when you're realizing that the give and take energy isn't equal, that you're not actually receiving as much as you give out. And so, yes, when you said it's so easy for me to have the empathy for you or hold up the mirror and shine your light, but when to give myself grace, it's like, no. I mean, hands up in the air, as anybody can relate to that. That is an ongoing awareness and then choice for
Yeah.
me to really give myself grace. Everybody else can pat me on the back and tell me what a great job I am, and I still have an inner turmoil and inner language happening. You could do more. And it's crazy, but it actually happens.
Yeah, it is crazy. And in fact, I've gone back and watched those. Thank heavens I have video recordings of those things, because when I can't remember, sometimes I'm like, I can't think of anything great about myself. I'm like, oh, for heaven's sakes. And when on a good day, that seems absurd. But there actually are times that that happens. And I actually have a list on my phone of things that people have said that I'm like, I go and read that and I remember, and things that I have said about myself. I remember things that I thought, things that I felt were divine downloads about me. And I read those things, and then I'm like, okay, let's get back, how can you show love to yourself? Because honestly, Debbie, the thing that I have found so ironic is that sometimes even when I read like testimonials and different things that make me feel so good, or a card from someone, oh, it just makes me feel so good. But when it really comes down to it, I am my own best friend. I know what I need to hear. And so I often will write letters to myself, and because I'm like, what do I wish someone would say to me? And then I kind of put myself in the, observer point of view, and I write myself a letter. And those letters, I just love those letters because I know what I want to hear.
Well, I didn't know that we were going down this pathway, but it feels very important that you just said this. And this is part of the inner child work that I do with my clients. It is, we don't go to write the letter, but when I take them into the vision and into the feeling of what did that feel like and who did you wish showed up for you? How would they act? What would they do? What would they say to you? Would they hold you? Would they kiss you? Would they comfort you? Because we often miss something in a certain time in our life. And here we are as adults wondering why we can't figure out how to regulate or to have these things we're still wishing for, or at least our inner child is still wishing for. Our adult has figured out another way to get through that, and sometimes not in the healthiest way. So divine downloads, I think that what you just said right now is again another divine download to tell us to like, let's talk about that. But quickly, let's go back to who Karen Hall is, because you're an educator, you're a supporter of other women, you are the executive director of the Women's Journal, which I have the privilege to be in. You have so many titles right now, and they continue to grow because the more you step into your own light, the more the people are seeing you and saying, would you love to do this too? So do you want to talk about this journey that you've been on with all of this growth happening?
Yeah, so it has been amazing, and people do keep asking. And I remember, I don't know if you know Kimberly Crow, but she is one of my mentors, and she said, if someone offers you a microphone, say yes. And I was like, "Ah," because speaking is something that terrifies me, and so I have been working and working and speaking every time I get a chance. I have spoken for, I don't know, 40 something years
Yeah.
in, like, in church and volunteer organizations and different things. But then to speak as an authority figure in this setting has been very different for me. And to have, a million eyes on me, that is very different for me. And so I felt very intimidated. The first time I spoke on a Tribune event, I was scared. I was really scared. And I had to do so much inner child work, and I had to do so much emotional regulation. And then I thought, the other thing that Kimberly says that I just love is, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. And so I thought, do I want to be here doing this thing on the Tribune? And I thought, heck yeah, this is fun. What am I thinking? And so I just, I just let it all go. And I went on camera and I just thought, this is so fun. I have wanted to do this my whole life. And I thought, this is amazing that I get to do this. And so that all the anxiety left and I had fun. And after that, there were more events that I was invited to speak at and more things that I was doing. I'm part of the Los Angeles Tribune podcast network, and my podcast is The Hero Within. And so I was working on my podcast, I was building community, and then I was asked to be the director of the Global Women's Journal. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. And I would love to have women from across the world be able to share their stories, because that's why I have the podcast, is so that I can give a voice to the voiceless. And so that, and when I found out that was part of Mo Rock's mission for the Los Angeles Tribune, I was like, oh, it's my mission too. And so I felt so aligned with so many of the, the positive, the flip of having more positive media than negative, the desire to have, more women be able to speak. And for Mo, that was why Mo wanted to do the Women's Journal, was he wanted to provide a platform where more women could tell their stories and have more women speak at the Tribune events, because many times it's the majority is men that are speaking at events, and men that are also in the news and things like that. So he wanted to have more opportunities, and I'm like, hallelujah, yes, for more women and empowering women. And that's another thing that is really rare, for Michael Silvers and Mo Rock to provide this container where men are supporting women and men are elevating women and empowering women. That's another thing that I am so grateful for. So I said yes to that. And then they said, do you want to host, an event, a panel? And I was like, sure. And they said, go do it. I'm like, okay, how do I do it? So I just what other hosts did, and they were mentors to me, Parisa, and Julianne, and so many, Misty Kerrigan, so many of them have just been amazing mentors to me, and Michael Silvers, and so I just started hosting, and then they said, and do you want to help produce the event? And I'm like, yes, say yes. So I started saying yes, and then they said, do you want to be an executive producer and do, you're in charge of the whole thing? And I'm like, okay, yes, let's do it. And so I just learn as I go, and I sink or swim. I just throw it, they just throw me in and off we go. And miraculously, by the grace of God, he inspires me. He gives me the resources, the people that come through at the last minute, to save the day. I just am so grateful, because I could tell you so many miracles that at the last second, all of a sudden, the Lord just opened the way and softened someone's heart and sent someone to help. And I'm just like, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Because I pray a lot with these events. I pray so much for the speakers. I want them to have a wonderful experience. I want them to be able to shine, and for their superpowers to shine. I want them to be able to share that message that they're passionate about. And I want to provide a platform so that they feel that they can do that in the way that they feel called to do, because I feel like we each have a calling within us. And I feel like the Lord is guiding each one of us to accomplish the purpose for which we were created. And so I feel a responsibility, to help that person and to make everything as smooth, the whole process to be as smooth and positive for them as I can. And I want it to be a positive reflection on the Tribune as well. So I do training, and I do speaker training, and I love speaking, and I'm also an author. And so I'm also doing training with the authors as the editor of the journal, helping, with that element. And so it's a wonderful thing, because, and then I'm coaching as well. And all of those things just kind of mesh together. And now I'm learning the technical end of things, like how to edit and do all those kinds of things. So there's so much. I have just grown. My brain is just so happy. My brain loves to learn. I'm a very curious person, and I love to learn. If I'm learning and serving, those are two of the things that bring me great joy.
Wowzers. I love it. So first and foremost, you have been an answer to my prayers. And I don't know if because when you talk about this, like, and then Mo Ruck comes in and he has the same vision as me and all of this stuff, I'm just sitting here back going ditto, ditto, ditto. Everything that I've been praying for the last year has shown up. And so to be able to do this in community and continue to build community in this way, it's just phenomenal. So I want to go back to purpose, because you talked about it. You believe that everybody has a purpose and a calling. How is what your experience right now today, this beautiful expansion of all of these things coming in, how can you see this and connect the dots to your actual purpose that you felt you've been called to do?
Well, I love this question because I always wanted to speak. When I was a little girl, and I would admire people that could speak in public. And when I got to, going like in high school and things, and I would see other people get up and they'd be confident, they'd even be on stage, in plays. I was like, oh, I just admire them so much. And I couldn't do that. I was terrified. I was really terrified. Like my voice would shake. I would turn bright red. My whole body would shake sometimes, and my voice would squeak. Hardly anything would come out. And I just was like, oh no, I'm not going to do it. Please don't call on me. And my mother was, I would lament to her how embarrassed I was. And she said, why don't you take a drama class? And I'm like, drama? Are you kidding? And get on the stage? And she said, yes, I think you need to do that. And one of the things about my mom is that she is really great at seeing what obstacles are and how to overcome them. And she was always trying to help me to improve on my weaknesses. And so she said, sign up, do it. You can do it. She gives me the big pep talk. So I go do it. And I got on stage and I started speaking and doing things. I decided I wasn't passionate about that. But then she said, you need to run for student council, run for leadership. You're such a leader. You need to go and do that. And I'm like, me? So I did. And I found out, yes, I love leading. And so I organized all these things and had a really great couple of years in high school doing student council and different things. And then but I was still scared to speak in public. And she said, okay, now you're in college, you need to take a public speaking class. And I said, oh my goodness, I don't know if I could do that. She said, yes, you can do it. So I took a public speaking class, and then I got married, and my husband said, we would sing together. And he said, okay, you sing to me. And I was like, no, I'll only sing with you. And he said, let's get you voice lessons. And I'm like, and sing by myself? And he said, yes, you have a beautiful voice, sing, and so I would practice. I didn't want him to listen to me, so I would practice in the car. And so overcoming all of these fears has been a massive journey for me. And speaking in church, I was terrified of that, but I did that. I kept going. I kept facing all these fears through the years with my little mantra from my little blue engine that could. My mom used to read me that as my bedtime story. I think I can. I think I can. And my mom thought I could. My dad thought I could. My dad thought I was a superstar. He was always focusing on my strengths, and he was always saying, you have this superpower. Did you know that you have this gift? And he would tell me all the superpowers. So I had these two people that were focused in different ways of helping me to be the best I could. And so with their faith in me, I faced my fears, and with this drive. So this drive, I finally realized this is a divine seed within me that needs to be nurtured. And every time I nurtured it, I felt greater joy. And I realized this is something that the Lord wants me to do. And I didn't really know why, but then I realized all of these things that I was learning were things that he was teaching me about how to regulate my emotions, about how to think differently, about how to, provide self-love to myself, about how to drop judgment when I was having a difficult relationship with somebody. All these things, he wanted me to share those things with other people, because sometimes other people are in so much trauma they can't hear those messages from the Lord, or they haven't been taught how to recognize when he's speaking. And so he wanted me to share that because he knew that other people needed it. And what is so interesting now is that when I share those things, I can feel when other people receive it. I can feel when they feel the Spirit and they feel something divine. They feel light, and they write to me and they tell me at those moments, when they felt that. Oh, Debbie, that brings me so much joy, because it's not me. It's just I'm just the messenger, just delivering the message. It's this conduit. And when the Spirit comes out, sometimes I'm surprised at the words that come out of my mouth. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't me. And that, I can't tell you that joy, because that is my purpose. That's one of my purposes. And that's a big purpose of why I'm here on earth. And I shouldn't be alive. I mean, the doctors told me I was at 1 pound, 13 ounces shortly after birth. And the doctors told my parents I wouldn't live. And back in those days, they didn't have all the amazing medical care that they do now. But I did survive. And by the grace of God, I defied the odds of death. And he blessed me to be a tiny but mighty fighter. And
Mm.
so I shouldn't even be here, but I am. And because of him, I am able to share these messages, because I have been so abundantly blessed in my life to learn these things. And now when I can help someone else to benefit from this knowledge and to help them change their mindset or to have those aha moments, oh my goodness, it just brings me so much joy. And as a speaker now, especially if it's live, but like I said, even if it's virtual, when I have those, when I feel the audience have the aha moment, oh my goodness. And I'm like, no wonder people get addicted to speaking and being on stage, because it is a joyous experience to connect with the audience.
Yeah, it's live transformation. You can physically feel it
Yeah.
and you can celebrate with them. There's this exchange of energy as this continues to upgrade and for us to really step into the next level. And I love it, whether it's a 30-minute workshop that you bring somebody through. And I too believe that I am working with the divine and that the message is coming through me. So it's really fun just to go, what's the message today? And
Huh.
so what I was thinking before this interview was, what message is meant to come through the two of us today, because I know that we both very much can hear and connect. And so there was a question that came in my mind, and you are the queen of empathy. You definitely can put yourself into somebody else's shoes. You can feel what they're feeling, but you can also, once you tap into what they're feeling, you can help them shift that into more joy, more love, more expansion, more possibilities, more hope. And that is a gift that I believe only a few people on this earth have. So thank you for going through your self-regulations process so that you can feel so comfortable in helping other people. Now, I want to just zip back quickly about your podcast, because your podcast, The Hero Within, is the name of it, correct? Yeah. So you started this podcast specifically to help elevate and empower and tell people stories. Do you want to talk to a little bit about what has been the ripple effect from you making that decision to create this podcast?
Yes. So it's interesting because this is why I started this podcast. I'm going to go back in time a little bit. When I have gone through very difficult times, when I hadn't learned the things that I had learned yet, and I was still struggling, and I went through a lot of struggles. I dealt with postpartum depression. I have anxiety on a regular basis. I have had difficulties in relationships. I have misperceived things. I have had faulty thinking, limiting beliefs, all of those things that I have dealt with. And sometimes it has gotten quite overwhelming for me. And as I was doing that, I would share these things with other women specifically, sometimes therapists. And I was met with confusion. And people would say, I can't relate to anything that you're talking about. And therapists even said that to me. And I was left feeling like an alien. I felt like there was nobody that could understand me. And it was the most lonely feeling in the world, to feel like no one could relate. No one. I mean, even my closest friends that I love dearly would be like, I really can't understand you. and and so I decided, you know what? Maybe people can't understand me, and maybe they can't relate to what I feel and what I'm going through, but maybe there's somebody out there that, if I interviewed other people and heard their stories and shared their stories, maybe someone else could relate to their story. And I thought, we don't have to have the same experience. We could connect on a feeling level. I have felt very lonely in my life. Maybe someone else has felt lonely, and maybe they'll say, oh, she felt that way. I'm not the only one that felt that way. And it doesn't matter if our experiences are different. We do, we can relate on that feeling level. So I started interviewing people for my book. And that then life would happen and it got set aside. And then I didn't know how to market my book. And people said, you have to know how to market it before you publish it. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of that. So then the thought came to me, just start a podcast and you can just interview people live on the podcast and share that story. You don't even have to figure out how to market it, which I actually do, but I didn't know that. And so I just thought I can just pick up a phone and start talking. And then I realized that could go out to the world. And I just prayed that with that guest, that somehow they would share a message that would bless someone else's life, that someone else that was struggling with that feeling or whatever, that they would know that they weren't alone. So that was why I started the podcast. And what was so interesting about it was that my first guest was someone in South Africa. And the Lord honestly just plops people into my lap. I don't go looking for most of my guests, like very, very seldom. I mean, I can't even think of a single time actually. If I hear somebody like I hear you speak, I get this message. You're on my list and you are on my list. And so it's like, okay. And I have this list. I have like 200 people on my list and I can't get to them fast enough because of all the hosting that I'm doing with the Tribune. But the podcast for me it's free. And so anybody can listen. There's no barriers as far as people having to figure out how to pay for the book or anything like that. Although I am writing a book too, but I realized that this was a way that I could help other people with their divine calling to share their message and what they have learned and their journey. When I interview people, every single time, Debbie, it is such a spiritual experience for me. I feel so much love for them because I see how much the Lord has blessed them. I celebrate so much and I cry with them with their challenges they've gone through. I just feel, so much empathy for their struggles and I just feel so much joy for the things that they've learned and how they got through it with the Lord's help. And so it's a spiritual experience every single time for me. And I feel so connected to them. I stay connected with them. I send them messages, their birthdays or whatever. I still just love Rusty Labuschagne is the first person on my podcast, and the things that he went through and the forgiveness that he had to do and the hope that he clung to in the most outrageous, unbelievable, horrific, barbaric conditions. But by the grace of God, he survived. And now he shares that message and helps other people forgive and have hope. And I just celebrate how he is able to do that. So I feel so honored when people come on. This is something that has been an interesting thing for me. I feel grateful. Like a lot of times people will talk to me when I'm coaching. They're like, oh, you probably don't want to hear this. And I'm like, no, I really do. Please tell me, because I love to hear your story. And even with my friends, they'll be like, oh, you probably don't have time. And I'm like, oh, please, I will stay up all night if I need to. I just love to connect with people. I love it like air. I need it like air. And so when someone honors me and shares their heart with me, and I know that they trust me to do that, oh, Debbie, that's the greatest joy. And then to know that I could do something or share something that would bless their life, my joy is so magnified. So that's
Wow.
why I
That
do.
is a huge ripple. Thank you for sharing that, because you create this beautiful, safe environment for people to share a story. And let's be honest, sometimes that's the first time they've ever even spoken that story out loud. And to create a safe place like that is magic in itself. And then
It's magic for me.
it is, but it's for both, right? Like it's something, it is air. It's like something you didn't even know you needed to be witnessed and to be accepted even when you tell your darkest moments. That is a gift. And so I don't take that lightly in itself, both sides, the interviewer and that. But to have this podcast, like you said, it's free. It's something that takes time and there's back end expenses, but it's completely doable, other than everybody paying $500 an hour for a coaching session. It's
Right.
being seen and heard and witnessed and celebrated for who you're actually being. And that is such a beautiful thing that you've done here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I received that. And again, it's only by the grace of God, because he gives me the questions to ask. And he brings the spirit there so they do feel safe. And many of my guests tell me, they say something or they tell me a story and then they say, I have never shared that with anyone before, just like what you said. And again, I feel so honored that they would trust me and be willing to share that. And many times that thing is what so many people connect with. That is what people needed to hear. And so honestly, I can't think of another word to say besides I feel so honored to be in that position. It's such a joy to me. So that's what keeps me going. A lot of people, they say that statistically that like, I don't know, like 95% of people that start podcasts don't make it past the 8th episode. And I remember when I got to the 8th episode, I was like, yes. And it was a huge learning curve for me. And it was expensive, learning things and taking courses and trying to figure the whole thing out. But that passion was so deep within me, that purpose was so strong that kept me going. And that joy that I had every time with each interview. Yes, I'm doing more. Yes, I'm going to keep figuring this out because I was so blessed. And then the other people told me they were blessed too. So it's a two-way thing. And then it ripples out and other people are blessed too. And so it's just like, and thank you for magnifying my joy by seeing me and hearing me and celebrating this with me too, Debbie. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. It really is an honor and a privilege. So just as we wrap this up, I want to give you an opportunity to share some wisdom with the people here. So we're inside of the Be Extraordinary Women's Network, and there's times that people have felt extremely extraordinary, and there's times that they have felt that they don't really deserve a seat at the table yet. And so whether you're speaking to both sides of that or picking one, what is the message that you have to women inside of this community?
You used a really great word there. You said, maybe I feel like I don't deserve a seat at the table yet. And Debbie, I think when I learned the power of yet, oh my goodness, that was extraordinary for me because I would get so frustrated with technology and I would say, I don't know how to edit this. I don't know how to do this. And I would say, yet. And I kept saying that. That is an empowering word because what that does is that gives you hope. And hope is a divine gift. And so to have that hope that somehow you're going to figure that out. One of my mantras that the Lord told me to say is, I'll figure this out. We'll figure this out. And I use it with relationships. I use it with coaching. I use it with every single obstacle that I come across. We'll figure this out. The Lord and I will figure this out. With him, all things are possible. And I can testify to that in so many experiences in my life. The fact that I'm speaking at events, the fact that I am saying yes to a microphone is a testimony that the Lord helped me to figure that out. And he enabled me to do all the things that I do in every single way, every single event that I do. He is enabling me. I am not doing it on my own. I could tell you so many insights and impressions that he gives me, answers to prayer. You were an answer to prayer at an event. And so those things, I don't take those miracles for granted because I don't take it lightly. I honestly know that I could not do any of this without him. So for all of you out there, turn to the Lord, turn to your divine source, the universe, light, love, however you describe it, and you will receive divine help because you are a divine being and the Lord wants to help you to fulfill your purpose and he'll help you figure it out.
Wow. Thank you so much, Karen, for being our guest this morning. You are definitely an extraordinary woman making extraordinary moves, and the ripple is being felt across the globe. So thank you for being our guest.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for seeing and hearing me and for celebrating my joy with me.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.